Welcome back to my bench. I have what I hope is a treat for us today. Normally I would open a bag like this in a post bag video, but in this case I know exactly what's in it and I want to build it once I open it. So let's get started. What we have here is a T12 soldering iron kit that I purchased on eBay. And I've seen a couple of YouTubers, mostly Russian guys, putting this together. And basically what it is it takes a T12 Heiko bit, this is probably a fake one, and they have basically a power supply for it. And this will do temperature control of that power supply. And the really neat thing about the T12 bits is it's all one piece. So I don't know how well you can see that, but the ceramic heating element is inside here. So you can see the ceramic there. So the ceramic heating element is inside here, and I think it's very close to the tip. And the thermocouple is built in there as well. So it comes completely disassembled. You get this handle here into which this board here goes. I think it slots in something like that. And then this will slot inside of there. If I pull that out, you can see it has these pins to make connections at different points. So basically what I have to do then, wire up this board here, which is the power supply. I have to add in the LED that goes in there, and then this power connector. This power connector here fits into these holes here, and then you wire the whole thing up to this board, which then goes into the handle, and you have a soldering iron. And this thing can be driven off of 12 volts all the way up to 24 volts. I think 24 volts is preferred, but I don't have a 24 volt power supply. So I will probably power it off of 12 volts, or maybe I think I have an old laptop power supply that I might use for that, which isn't quite the full 75 watts I think it can take, but yeah, we'll give that a try. And then it looks like this is the power cable. I'm not sure what the center is, because the kits that I saw online before didn't have that. They just had two wires, but I guess we'll have to look that up, find that out as we go. So what I'm doing here is just pulling apart the this connector, which goes on the cord, from the part that solders into the board. And I think there's nothing wrong with me just going ahead and soldering that right in. It has a key here on the top that I'm going to keep on the top, and that way I can match the pins on this part up to the pins in the connector. So I'll start with this in there, like so. You can see the pin is at the top. And to solder this, I'm using my fake Heiko 936 iron, which is okay, but it doesn't have the thermal capacity that I need for quite a lot of things. I'm going to bring the camera in a little closer. I think I'm going to use my helping hands here because now that I have that one pin soldered in, this isn't going to fall out. Yeah, and you can really feel this is not getting enough heat. Let me turn my iron up. This is exactly why I need this soldering iron. I've also ordered some other bits for this T12 iron, so we'll see when they come what those are like. The one that's almost here, a couple of days out, is a pointy tip like this one, and then I also have a wedge shaped bit on the way. So the bits are not expensive, probably because they're not real Heiko ones, but you could actually use real Heiko ones with this, which if I'm not pleased with it for some reason, I may do that. Right, so it's not the best soldering work I've ever done, but it's also not the worst, and it's very hot. So it's a little blobby, but with that high of a thermal mass item, it's about as good as I can do. So I have also ordered a case to put this thing in, and I really should wait to put the LED in until I do that. So I'm just not going to trim the leads, because that way I can move it when I get the case and fit the LED to where that fits in the relative to this. I'll probably have to touch that up, but I'm impatient, so I'm going to build it now. So the LED, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, it has a flat on the one side. Yeah, you can see it much better that way. So it's flat there, and that's the side that goes with that flat that you can see on the silk screen there. It also says plus and minus, and the long lead is the plus, so the flat is the minus. Trying to work in the camera, it's very hard. It's much easier to see what you're doing if you just look. So I'm going to sort of guess the height based on the height of the other things, and we'll see how close I get. So that's a pretty good solder joint there. Ordinarily I would trim those leads, but because I'm not sure of exactly what height I'm going to want this to be at, I'm going to leave those as they are for now, and just be careful with them, not to have them short out. So that's, I think, it with this piece of the module, and then the rest of it is going to be soldering the wires from the cord onto this thing. So before I forget and do something stupid, I'm going to put this cord through the handle, which I know I could do later, but this way it just means I'm much less likely to be stupid about it. I don't know about you guys, but I always seem to find myself not doing those easy sorts of things when I should be. Alright, so we have a couple of different colors of wire, and let's see. So I'm going to be, I think, cable tying this cable using that notch there. I don't think they supplied a cable tie. Oh, they did. So in here they supplied some little wires, which I could have used to relocate this, what do you call it, this port here, connector, that's the name. And there's some heat shrink, which I would probably also have used there, but I will be using that when I connect to this side of the connector. And then there's this nice little cable tie here. It's going to fit very nicely into that notch, which is good because I didn't have one of that size. I'm just going to remove this so I don't accidentally hurt it, and put that in there. And let's sort of line things up here. I'm going to want just a little more insulation off than that. This is silicone-y sort of wire, so, or the shielding here. I think this is just the normal PVC, but this at least I think is silicone-y. So that's good. Alright, did they provide me with the vibration sensor? So the way this is supposed to work, from what I've seen online, there's a vibration switch that goes right here, which tells the device whether it's in the soldering dock or not. I don't see that. I do actually have my own, so I'll probably just use that. They have different sensitivities, so I have two different kinds. They're not very complicated devices, so you can't even put them in backwards. So I'm not too terribly worried about that. Except that they appear to be saying this has 3 leads. And the ones that I have only have 2. So the ones that I have look like this. There's a small wire there, which is from a spring. And basically, there's a spring that surrounds a little inner shaft, and when you move it, the spring will make contact with the inner shaft. And then that basically tells you that there was a vibration that happened. And these have different sensitivities, which is basically just the weight of the spring. And you can actually tell that by the springiness of this wire. This is much thicker wire than that. That's really thin wire. It's something you can feel. I don't think that can be gotten across on camera, but this is the lower sensitivity one, which seems probably like what I want. So without actually knowing how this works, let's see. Alright, so it turns out that I did actually have the piece that I thought I was missing here. And it does only have 2 leads, which is a little bit strange considering that sort of dotted line there. I'm not 100% certain what that means, but I do have a photo, and I'll just include that as an overlay from the eBay page, the listing, that does seem to show a 2-leaded one just plugged into this hole labeled 2 there. So between 1 and 2. So what I'm going to do is I'll just bend the leads, this guy, and I will insert that in here. And they also had a wiring diagram, which I was surprised by because the previous people who I'd seen building this kit had complained about a lack of wiring diagrams, but they had a wiring diagram, so I'll include an overlay of that here as well, and that will be what I'm following. Oh, and you can sort of hear that rattling. apparently this one works a little differently than the one that I had before, which would explain why the leads are different. It says a ball bearing in it, whereas these that I have are spring based. It's hard to hear that, but there's a little small kind of a high pitched spring noise. I don't know what else to call it other than that. Alright, so I am going to cut these wires a little bit. I'm going to cut the insulation back just a little bit further and then strip the wires and tin them. Alright, that's close enough for me. So I'm gonna tin these wires and probably shorten them. This is strange feeling wire. It's kind of springy. It might be aluminum, but it would have to be tinned because it's not copper coated. But I mean, it takes solder fine, but it is springier than I expect for normal copper wire. Those are pretty decent. So I'll trim those down and then solder them to the board. I will try, can't promise I'll succeed, to get the overlay in such a way that you can see it for reference. At this point, it doesn't actually matter which wire I put where because I still have to solder on the other side, and I can just, so if I mess up the wiring here, I can always correct it on that side. But be better if I don't mess up the wiring here because that will make my job much easier on the other side. The coloring that we have is white goes to this B. I don't know what B is, but that's where white goes. Black goes to negative. Green goes to ground. Or yeah, ground. And blue goes to this thing called A, which I don't know what that is either. And red goes to plus. Right, so I'm going to have to solder it in sort of to one side like so, and then solder the other wires because it's not cooperating. Right, let's inspect the work. Good enough. I'm going to cut the leads, or trim the leads, I should say. Alright, and I'm going to rebend the leads on this component so that that white stripe goes up, just because I like it better that way. Oh, and I'll post a video link in the description To the guy on whose... Excuse the ambulance, I live by a hospital. To the guy whose video I originally watched, where I learned about this soldering iron, does a really good job on all of his videos, actually. I really like his videos. Talking about modules you can buy from China, and just sort of overview of how to use them. His channel is called Arduino Lab. He buys a lot of NRF wireless modules, and he's done a couple of distance tests. He's a Russian guy, so if you don't speak Russian, unfortunately I don't think you'll get much out of his channel, but if you do, there's a few people, Russian-speaking people, who have watched my videos, then I think you'll enjoy it. I apologize for the jump in video, but the camera I was filming this on ran out of memory and stopped filming while I was building it. But where we left off, I was just about to put the zip tie for strain relief on the cable. There's a small groove in the PCB here that gives that some purchase, so it's a pretty good strain relief. I think that will do nicely. This whole board mounts into a small groove into a small groove here. Mounts in there. Then this piece goes on. And finally, the T12 bit can go in, and that rides all the way up to this first ridge, like so. This piece snugs up to the second ridge there, like so. So that's the soldering pen itself, and then we can go to the connections to the base. So I've just soldered the wires onto this connector. The way that I did that is following the wiring diagram that they had. I just put that piece in there like that, and followed the wiring diagram, which shows the colors of the wire. And since I matched them up correctly on the other side, I didn't have to change any around on this side. And then this housing to that connector actually screws on to the plastic of this connector here. And when that's tight, you can snug that down. There's some little screws here that tighten the case onto the sheathing of the cable. And then that just plugs in like so. So I'm going to plug it in now, and I'll just show you how quickly it heats up. Oh, and for the power cable, I've left the yellow one unconnected. I'm not entirely certain what it connects to because it wasn't in the wiring diagram for the kit that I had. I'll test that out later, but I expect that it's an earth ground as opposed to a negative connection, in which case I would just connect it to this here. This wire is coming from a laptop power supply, which is about 19 volts. So that should give us most of the power of this iron, although not quite as much as we would get off of 24 volts. So if I plug this in, this screen will show the temperature, which will rapidly climb. The iron, I think, is set to 200 right now, which is Celsius. And you can see it's starting to smoke. And it's already beginning to melt solder. So I'll set that up a little bit higher, which you can do with this here. So I've set that to 250 degrees. And you can see it's already up to temperature. And it just solders even on full PCB clad, copper clad very quickly. So the thermal capacity of this iron is very nice, at least compared to others that I've used. It would have been very helpful in the making of this kit because the connections on this side here were a little bit much for my clone 936 iron. But yeah, very happy with this. I think that this bit will be better than other bits on this particular iron for thermal capacity. But one of the things that it's really good at is wicking up solder. So, you know, because it has that high thermal capacity, you can actually kind of slide it through the solder more quickly, and then I gather quite a lot of solder on that braid. So that's this Heiko T12 based iron. I hope you enjoyed the kit build. I hope to put out a video with a more in-depth review of the sleep features and maybe some other soldering scenarios later. But in general, I can highly recommend this. I very much enjoyed it, and I plan to use it as my primary soldering iron. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.